It started on an ordinary Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen to a 68-year-old woman who only wanted to buy a discounted rotisserie chicken and catch reruns of The Golden Girls. But life, apparently, had other plans for me. Cruel, hysterical plans. I had just returned from my senior yoga class, where I was, for the record, the only person who didn't fall asleep during meditation, when I stepped into the house and froze. Not because of back pain, though that was also present, but because I heard my own son's voice drifting from the kitchen. "Mom is becoming too much trouble," Ethan said. My only child. My pride. My joy. The boy I carried through 18 hours of labor that felt like I was passing a sofa through my pelvis. Too much trouble. I stood in the hallway, my grocery bag hanging from my wrist like a limp hostage, listening to the sound of my child casually preparing to evict me from the life I built for him. Rachel chimed in, her voice as sweet as artificial vanilla extract. "She'll be happier in assisted living, babe, and we really need her room, especially with Linda coming. She deserves something stable." Linda. The name hit me like cold soup. I hadn't heard that name spoken in this house ever. Linda, the woman my ex-husband left me for. Linda, the human reminder that I wasn't fun enough, young enough, or flexible enough, emotionally or otherwise. I peeked toward the kitchen. Ethan leaned on the counter, eating grapes like a Greek god of betrayal. Rachel stirred something in a pot, smiling in the vague, pleasant way people do when they're planning your relocation. "Besides," she added softly, "your mom already helped us with the house. She'll understand, eventually." I almost laughed out loud. Understand what? That I was being demoted from mom to inventory that needs to be moved for renovation? I clutched my grocery bag tighter. A tomato burst inside from the pressure, symbolic if you enjoy on-the-nose metaphors. I took a quiet step backward. If I kept listening, I'd march into that kitchen and say something regrettable, like, "I'm actually still alive, and we couldn't have that." Dead people are easier to manage than mothers with opinions. So I slipped upstairs to my room, my sanctuary, my last square footage of autonomy, only to stop short. There were boxes, not mine, neat ones, labeled in sharp marker. And on my neatly made bed, a new set of sheets, still in plastic, tastefully floral, aggressively not my style, preparing a room for someone else, for her. I let out a small, humorless breath. "Well," I whispered to myself, "looks like I've lost my room to the woman who once stole my husband, efficiency at its finest." I sat on the edge of the bed and allowed the absurdity to settle into my bones. My son wanted to replace me with his father's mistress, and that was the moment. Somewhere between the shattered tomato and the tacky floral bedsheets, when a peculiar calm settled over me. If they thought I was too much trouble, they hadn't seen anything yet. I didn't cry. You'd think a woman who just discovered she's being replaced in her own bedroom by her ex-husband's former mistress would collapse dramatically onto her floral, not-my-style bedsheets. But no. I'd used up my quota of dramatic collapses in 1999, the day the divorce papers arrived in the mail next to a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. So instead, I opened my closet, not for clothes. Those were still mine, though I did check. But because I needed to breathe inside a space that hadn't already been repurposed for someone else. The closet smelled like cedar, old perfume, and the faint scent of self-respect trying to make a comeback. That's when I noticed something odd on the top shelf. A stack of neatly folded guest towels I didn't buy. White. Embroidered. As if Martha Stewart had broken in and decided to mock my existence. I reached up, pulled one down, and found a sticky note attached. For L. Linda. Rachel was labeling my house like a storage unit. I laughed. Out loud. And not the cute sitcom laugh. No, this was the sharp, unhinged giggle of a woman who has finally realized she is the unpaid intern in her own family. It triggered a memory. A flashback from 15 years earlier. Me at my old kitchen table, signing away the sale of my first house so Ethan and Rachel could afford the down payment on this one. Ethan hugged me, called me the most supportive mom in the world. Rachel cried. I cried. Everyone cried. Now? My tears would probably stain their new guest towels, so clearly I needed to keep them inside. Back to the present. I left the closet and looked around my room again. Boxes, sheets, towels. It felt like I had died and no one bothered to inform me. Rachel knocked lightly on my door. "Mom? Just checking in." She poked her head through the gap, smiling the smile of a customer service rep who's been trained to handle difficult seniors. "You're home early?" she said. "Everything okay?" "Oh, peachy," I replied, sitting up straighter. "Love what you've done with my future dead woman's room." Her smile twitched. "It's not like that. We just want what's best for everyone." "Yes," I nodded. "Especially Linda?" "I hear she's getting my pillow privileges." Rachel blinked. "I didn't think you would mind. You're always saying you prefer smaller spaces." "I meant emotionally," I said. "But sure, let's be literal." She retreated quickly after that. When she left, I sank back into my chair and stared at my reflection in the window. The late afternoon light caught the lines on my face, the ones earned from raising a son, surviving infidelity, and apparently preparing to become an unwanted houseplant. For a minute, I felt small. Background noise, a placeholder in a life I helped pay for. But another feeling crept in with that same fading light. Annoyance, a spark, an internal, "Oh, absolutely not." If life insisted on treating me like a background extra, it clearly forgot I once stole the show. The next morning, I woke up determined to behave like a sane, reasonable adult. By noon, that plan was already dead. I went downstairs to make coffee, my small act of defiance, since apparently even breathing too loudly counted as too much trouble. On the counter sat an unfamiliar folder, cream-colored, glossy, the kind of folder people use when they're planning a wedding, a lawsuit, or a disaster. I opened it. Inside were printouts of emails, and on the top page, highlighted in cheerful yellow like a kindergarten project, the name Linda Hartwell. Linda. The universe really needed new material. The email thread was between Ethan, Rachel, and a third sender, Linda, age 65, who apparently had upgraded from stealing husbands to stealing email etiquette. Her message, time-stamped from the night before, read, "Excited to see the room. I'll move in as soon as the guest linens arrive. Thank you both for preparing everything so thoughtfully." My hands went cold. The room, as in my room, the one I had just vacuumed. The one that still had the dent from my knee surgery pillow. I kept reading. Ethan replied, "Mom won't make a fuss. She knows we're at capacity. We'll encourage her to tour assisted living this week. She'll come around." Ah, yes, encourage. A charming euphemism for push her out like last season's furniture. Then came the part that truly knocked the oxygen out of my lungs. Rachel had written, "She's been emotional lately. It's probably time. Linda deserves a stable place after everything she's done for us financially." Financially. There it was, the missing puzzle piece snapping into place. Linda wasn't just moving in, she was investing, funding something. And my son, my own flesh and sofa-pushing labor, was indebted to her. I closed the folder slowly as if it contained radioactive shame. A memory surged up without permission. Me, 20 years younger, sitting in a courtroom while Linda held my ex-husband's arm like she was claiming her prize at a county fair. Her smug smile, the perfume that smelled like citrus and bad decisions. And now she was coming into my house, bought with my money, to occupy my room. I pressed my palms to the counter, breathing through the absurdity. If there had been a camera crew present, I could have turned directly to them and said, "This episode of My Life Has Gone Too Far is brought to you by betrayal and poor financial planning." Footsteps approached. Ethan walked in, stretching casually. "Morning, Mom." "Morning," I replied, matching his cheerful tone with the precision of a serial killer in a Hallmark movie. He poured himself coffee, oblivious. "Big changes coming, huh?" "Oh, enormous," I said. "Tell me, how is Linda these days? Still ruining marriages or branching out?" He froze, just a twitch. Just enough for me to see a crack in the confidence. What do you mean?" I tapped the folder twice. I said softly, "you're bringing her into my room. I figured we should reacquaint." For the first time, Ethan looked genuinely nervous. And that, in a twisted way, was the first calm breath I'd taken in 48 hours. Because I finally knew what I was dealing with. And it wasn't just disrespect. It was a scheme. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I didn't even throw the folder at Ethan's forehead, which shows remarkable restraint for a woman who once threw a ham at her ex-husband during divorce week. Instead, I went back upstairs, my soon-to-be former room, and closed the door quietly. The kind of quiet that scares people more than any yelling ever could. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floral sheets Linda would soon plant herself on. The absurdity of it all settled into me like humidity. uncomfortable, sticky, and impossible to ignore. For a moment I let myself sink, really sink. The weight of years pressed down, years of being the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who sold her home to help her son buy his. Years of being treated like background decor in the lives of people I'd carried, fed, protected, and occasionally bailed out. I pressed the heels of my palms into my eyes until stars danced behind my eyelids. "Congratulations, Maggie," I muttered. "You've been demoted to seasonal furniture." My gaze drifted to a stack of old documents in my nightstand. They'd lived there undisturbed for years: mortgage papers, bank statements, those endless forms you sign during closing day when everyone's pretending the interest rate is normal. Out of habit, I pulled the top document, then froze. There, in black ink that had clearly not faded with time, was my own signature. Next to Ethan's. On the mortgage. I blinked. Leaned closer. Read again. Not just witness. Not emergency contact. Not supportive mom, signing because she loves her son. No, I was co-borrower. Which meant I wasn't just living here. I technically owned part of the house. I sat back slowly, a strange sensation bubbling up under my ribs. Not anger, not sorrow, but something electric. I flipped through more papers, closing disclosures, bank transfers, the original down payment agreement, all of them stamped with my name, my money, my legal authority. A laugh, not sad this time, but sharp and startling, slipped out of me. "My God," I whispered. "I'm not powerless. I'm a stakeholder. A stakeholder whose bedroom was being gifted away like a party favor." I shuffled through the documents again, each page tightening a string inside me. How long had I forgotten what I'd contributed? How long had I been performing the role of harmless grandmother decor while holding the one thing everyone feared most? Financial leverage. I whispered to the empty room, if only I'd known I had this kind of power during the marriage, I wouldn't have let that man take the dog. A decision began forming with the slow, deliberate precision of a storm front. I wasn't leaving this house quietly. I wasn't being encouraged anywhere. And I certainly wasn't handing my room to the woman who once stole my husband. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. I had just found the rulebook, and my signature was on every page. I didn't expect the universe to send me help. Especially not in the form of a man named Gary, whose profile picture in the email looked like he'd been fighting with a leaf blower moments before the photo was taken. His message arrived the next morning. "Hi. You don't know me. I'm Gary Hartwell, Linda's ex-husband. I believe our lives have overlapped again. Can we talk?" Overlapped. What a delicate way to describe the chaos Linda tended to leave behind. Like glitter, but emotionally corrosive. I agreed to meet him at Sunrise Cafe, mostly because it had good lighting, and I wanted to appear like a woman who still had choices. Gary arrived looking exactly like a man whose retirement had been siphoned into someone else's dream board. He wore a windbreaker. A windbreaker. No one in a windbreaker is up to anything threatening, which was comforting. "Margaret?" he asked. "Yes, and you must be the man who survived marriage to Linda." He sighed. "Barely." We sat. I ordered tea. He ordered black coffee and drank it like medication. "Look," he began, rubbing his temples. "I know this is uncomfortable, but I think Linda's doing something with your son." "Doing something to him or with him?" I asked. "Financially," he clarified. "Although with Linda, both are possible." He pulled out a folder, his version of my folder from yesterday, and slid it across the table. Bank statements, transfers, investments, all showing Linda quietly funneling money into Ethan's business. "She took it from our joint retirement," he said. "Money she wasn't supposed to touch without my consent." "So she stole from you," I summarized. "She calls it reallocating." I snorted. "Of course she does." He lowered his voice. "Margaret, if she moves into your house, she can claim residency. That gives her leverage in certain legal disputes. She's been preparing this for months." I stared at him. "Linda, the woman who once destroyed my marriage, now using my home as her next chess move." "I think Ethan doesn't understand the trap he's in," Gary continued. "Linda dangles money, he clings. She did the same to my ex-stepson years ago. It hit me then. Ethan wasn't just being selfish, he was being manipulated. Willingly? Maybe. But manipulated all the same." "What do you want from me, Gary?" I asked. "To stop her," he said simply. "You have legal leverage. I have financial documentation. Together, we can make this very inconvenient for Linda." I raised an eyebrow. We're forming a team? He shrugged. A support group. 2 members, both very tired. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in days. And just like that, an unexpected alliance formed across a sticky cafe table between 2 people who had suffered the same villain in different decades. When we stood to leave, Gary put on his windbreaker with the solemnity of a knight donning armor. "Margaret," he said, "whatever plan you're forming, I'm in." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel outnumbered. When I got home from meeting Gary, I walked through the front door with the poise of a woman who had just discovered she owned half the kingdom. I even hung my coat dramatically, the way actresses do when they're about to deliver a monologue that ruins everyone's week. But instead of declaring war immediately, I smiled sweetly, weaponizing politeness. People never see kindness as the first shot fired. "Mom," Ethan said cautiously, "you okay?" "Oh, absolutely," I replied. "I've been thinking, maybe it is time for a change. Assisted living could be lovely." Rachel nearly dropped her water bottle. "Really?" "Yes," I said, patting her arm, "and I'd love for us to have a nice dinner before any transitions happen. A celebration. A thank you. Somewhere classy." Ethan's shoulders relaxed. "That would mean a lot." "Oh, it would mean something, all right." Upstairs, behind my closed door, I immediately called Gary. "They bought it," I said. "Told you," he replied. "Linda always underestimates other women, especially the ones she wronged." We began outlining a plan, not revenge exactly, but a corrective experience. A public corrective experience. Tasteful, legal, devastating. Step 1. Paperwork. I spent the next afternoon gathering every document with my name on it. Mortgage contracts, bank transfers, the original loan I gave Ethan for his down payment. I organized them in a neat binder labeled housekeeping, because humor is a way of staying alive. Step 2. Legal backup. I met quietly with a real estate attorney who confirmed, with a sympathetic tilt of his head, that I owned a legally protected share of the house. Ethan could not evict me without initiating a process that would expose his and Linda's financial entanglements. If I wanted to call the loan I'd given him, he'd have to either pay me back or sell the house. Delightful information. Step 3. The dinner. I made reservations at the Lantern Room, a restaurant with dim lighting, expensive flatware, and acoustics perfect for hearing uncomfortable truths. The kind of place where people pretend they're doing fine even while their lives are falling apart. I requested a round table. Power flows differently when no one can hide in a corner. Step 4. Invite list. "Ethan, Rachel," I said cheerfully later that evening, "why don't we invite your father as well? And, oh, Linda, of course, she's practically family at this point." Ethan hesitated. "Dad too?" "Yes," I said sweetly. "He'll want to see how well everything is going." "Everything." He nodded, not realizing I'd just placed him in the splash zone. For the next 2 days, the house buzzed with Rachel's excitement and Ethan's oblivious optimism. Meanwhile, Linda sent chirpy emails confirming her arrival date, her dietary restrictions, no dairy, no gluten, no guilt, and how thrilled she was to contribute to the household. Contribute. I nearly framed that email. On the night before the dinner, I walked into my room, still cluttered with Linda's linens, and whispered to myself, "Tomorrow you cease being trouble, you become consequences." And for the first time in a long while, I slept beautifully. The Lantern Room glowed like the inside of a very expensive lantern, warm, golden, and deceptively gentle. A perfect setting for emotional destruction. I arrived early, wearing my nicest scarf and the expression of a woman who had fully accepted her fate. Or so they thought. One by one they entered. Ethan, nervous but trying to hide it. Rachel, dressed as though she were attending a Pinterest-themed award ceremony. My ex-husband, looking confused, which was his natural state. And finally, Linda. She swept in wearing a blouse that could only be described as aggressively optimistic, followed by a cloud of perfume that made the waiter blink twice. "Margaret," she said, offering a cheek I didn't ask for, "I'm so touched you arranged this." "Oh, honey," I replied, "I wanted you to feel right at home." Gary arrived last, bless him, in his windbreaker, still committed to that aesthetic, and took a seat beside me like a loyal foot soldier in sensible shoes. The waiter poured wine, plates clinked, everyone made small talk, the kind that fills spaces when tension is decorating the room already. Then I tapped my glass lightly. "I'd like to make a little speech," I said. Ethan smiled with visible relief. Rachel grabbed his hand. Linda adjusted her necklace, preparing to receive praise she absolutely did not deserve. I stood. First, thank you all for coming. I know change is difficult. Moving elderly relatives out of their homes, rearranging bedrooms, making space for new relationships. Linda blinked. But before I head to assisted living, Rachel exhaled as though she'd won something. I just wanted to review a few housekeeping matters. I reached into my bag and placed a tidy binder on the table. The label read housekeeping. My ex-husband squinted. Is that a chore chart? No, dear, I said sweetly. It's the mortgage. Noise stopped, completely. Even the waiter froze with a pepper grinder midair. I flipped open to the page with my signature. As it turns out, I said, I'm not simply a resident in the house. I'm a co-borrower, co-owner. And legally speaking, one cannot reassign a co-owner's bedroom to accommodate their former mistress without, well, complications. Linda's lips parted like she'd swallowed a bee. Rachel went pale. Ethan swallowed so hard the tablecloth moved. I continued, calm and poised. And since we're being transparent, it seems crucial to mention that some funds used recently didn't originate from Ethan, or Rachel, or me. I glanced at Gary. Gary leaned forward, cleared his throat, and produced his folder. These, he said, are withdrawals from my retirement account, funds Linda moved without authorization, money I will be filing a claim for. The room tilted, not literally, but in that emotional way where everyone realizes the ground is no longer stable. Linda whispered, Gary, don't do this. Oh, I'm just reallocating, he said with a gentle smile. I would have applauded if it weren't my own dinner. And so, I concluded, taking my seat again, before any new living arrangements are made, I thought it best we all understand the actual foundation of the household. Silence. Long, simmering silence. The kind that tells you no one at the table will be sleeping well tonight. The silence after my speech stretched so long, I began to wonder whether time itself had resigned out of discomfort. Finally, Ethan croaked. Mom, why are you doing this? I raised a brow. You mean why am I not joyfully surrendering my bedroom to the woman who helped dismantle my marriage? Darling, I thought it was obvious. Rachel, pale as unsalted butter, whispered, We didn't mean harm. We just thought it was practical. Ah, yes, I said gently. Practical. Like replacing aging appliances, only in this case, the appliance is your mother. My ex-husband shifted, clearing his throat. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Please stop talking, I said. You've misunderstood quite enough for one lifetime. Linda, to her credit, attempted to regain control. Margaret, we're all adults here. Let's not make this dramatic. Oh, sweetheart, I replied. You moved into my marriage, and now my mortgage. Drama is your love language. Gary choked on his water. I patted his back. Ethan leaned forward, hands clasped. Look, Mom, you've been stressed. Emotional. Maybe you're reading too much into. Careful, I warned softly. If you use the word emotional one more time, I will call the loan you owe me while the dessert menu is still on the table. His mouth snapped shut. I opened the binder again, flipping to the page the attorney highlighted for me. Ethan, you owe me a substantial sum. If I request repayment legally, the house must be refinanced or sold, which would be quite inconvenient, given your investor here may be dealing with a pending financial inquiry. Gary added helpfully, Very pending. Linda glared at him. You don't have the right? Oh, but I do, he said cheerfully. And this time, I've got receipts, literally. My ex-husband finally attempted something resembling logic. Margaret, surely you're not threatening your own son. Threatening? I said, genuinely surprised. No, I'm setting boundaries. Adults do that. Then I turned to Ethan, my tone soft but titanium underneath. You wanted me gone so you could make room for someone who is using you. You planned my exit, packed my future, and expected me to leave grateful. I'm not angry, son. I'm disappointed by the smallness of your imagination. Ethan swallowed. What do you want? Simple, I said. I will withdraw from the mortgage. I will call in the loan. You will sell the house or buy me out at fair value, and I will not be entering assisted living. I will be moving into a place of my own. Rachel whispered, But we can't afford that. I nodded sympathetically. Actions have consequences. It's an unfortunate theme of adulthood. Linda slammed her napkin down. This is outrageous. No, I corrected, calmly sipping water. This is math. The table went silent again, the heavy, suffocating kind that tells you a chapter has ended whether you like it or not. And in that moment, surrounded by stunned faces, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. The quiet kind, the earned kind. 3 months later, I woke up in a place that smelled nothing like regret. My new apartment, my own apartment, was bright, quiet, and free of floral sheets purchased for mistresses. The first morning sunlight landed on my small round table, where a cheap but charming plant sat thriving. Every time I looked at it, I felt victorious, simply because no one could label it 4LR. I stretched, made myself a perfectly mediocre cup of coffee, and stepped onto my balcony. It wasn't large, but it overlooked a line of oak trees that reminded me life had room for growth, even at nearly 70. My phone buzzed. A notification from my new blog, Maggie Unfiltered, Notes from a Former Background Extra. The title had been Gary's idea. He said it made me sound rebellious. I told him that at my age, rebellion was mostly avoiding salt. Still, the blog had somehow gathered a few hundred followers, mostly women my age, some younger, some older, all tired of being treated like side characters in their own homes. They left comments like, "Finally someone said it. My daughter thinks I'm a houseplant too. Please write a chapter about reclaiming your space." I answered every comment. It felt grounding, like stitching myself back together with the stories of other women. Later that afternoon, Gary visited. He knocked softly, holding a box of pastries as though they might explode if handled too confidently. "They had a sale," he said, walking in. "You say sale the way other men say I love you," I replied. He grinned, settling into my kitchen chair. His windbreaker swished in a comforting, familiar way. "How's retired life without Linda draining your accounts?" I asked, slicing a pastry. "Well," he said thoughtfully, "I have money again. And peace. Turns out both were on the endangered species list when she lived with me." We ate in companionable silence for a moment. "You know," he added, "you seem taller." "I'm 5'4". "Emotionally taller," he clarified. I shrugged. It's amazing what not being evicted by your own child does for the spine. We ended up talking about everything from finances to the TV shows we pretend we don't watch. He helped me assemble a shelf, badly, and left with the promise to return with real tools. When the door closed behind him, the apartment hummed with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, Ethan texted. A simple message. "Mom, can we talk sometime?" No excuses, no defensiveness, just a hesitant olive branch. I didn't reply right away, not out of spite, but out of peace. It was the first time in his life he needed my space, not the other way around. I closed my laptop, made chamomile tea, and curled into my small but mine armchair. My walls were bare, my furniture mismatched, my life rebuilt from the discount aisle, and for the first time, every inch of it felt like mine. A week after Ethan's text, we met at a quiet park near my apartment. I chose the location deliberately. Neutral ground, open air, no floral sheets to trigger flashbacks. He showed up looking older than 38. Guilt ages people fast. "Mom," he began, hands in pockets. I really messed up." I waited. Not coldly, just calmly. Like someone who had finally learned there was no prize for rushing to comfort a grown man. "I thought Linda was helping us," he said. "I didn't realize how much she was controlling things. Or how much we were hurting you." "You didn't want to realize," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to understand." Understanding. A word I had given him freely for decades, handed out like coupons. Receiving it back, even in small doses, felt strangely healing. We sat on the bench for a long time. No yelling, no tears, no scrambling to fix what had already fractured. Just two people acknowledging reality. Finally, I said, "Ethan, I love you. That never changed. But love without boundaries becomes martyrdom, and I am retired from that job." He let out a shaky breath. "I hope someday you'll let me visit your new place. When you come as my son," I said, "not as someone who thinks he can rearrange my life." He nodded again. This time, it looked like acceptance instead of defeat. Life moved forward. Linda, as expected, spiraled when Gary filed his claim. Between legal fees, forced repayments, and the revelation that she had used funds improperly, her glittering influence dulled fast. She did not move into Ethan's house. She didn't move into anyone's, actually. Turns out people hesitate to share a roof with questionable financial habits. Ethan and Rachel were forced to sell the house. They downsized, learned budgeting the hard way, and stopped treating adulthood like a group project where mom handled the impossible parts. My ex-husband attempted to reconnect briefly, mostly because he heard I looked happier. I suggested he reconnect with Google Maps instead. As for me, my small apartment became a sanctuary. My blog grew, slowly, honestly, beautifully, into a community of thousands. Women who had lost rooms, dignity, money, husbands, children, confidence, all finding each other through stories. I began hosting weekly writing circles. Gary attended once, declaring himself the token male representative for accountability. He brought pastries every week, good ones. Some nights, I sat on my balcony with tea, watching the street glow under the lamplight. I'd think of the room I lost, the room folded neatly into someone else's plans. And then I'd look around at the life I built from scratch. A life not borrowed, not shared out of duty, not taken for granted. My room is smaller now, but my life, it finally fits me. And that, I realized, is the real revenge. Not making others regret losing you, but making yourself grateful that you left. Some evenings, when the sun settles in that soft golden way that makes everything look forgiven, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea and think about the strange, sideways path that led me here. Not tragically, not bitterly, just honestly. It's funny. People talk about losing a room as though it's losing space. But for me, losing that room was the moment I finally stepped into my life. Back then, I thought survival meant holding on, staying quiet, making myself useful enough that others wouldn't push me out. I lived like a polite shadow, standing behind the people I loved, hoping loyalty would protect me. But shadows can be erased by the smallest shift in light. Finding out I was too much trouble didn't break me. It woke me. It reminded me that shrinking yourself doesn't make you safer. It just makes the world smaller than you deserve. In this little apartment, my imperfect, mismatched haven, I've met women who carry stories inside them the way trees carry rings, years of storms and survival etched deep. We write, we laugh, we drink lukewarm tea, and we stitch back the pieces of ourselves that we once handed away too easily. Sometimes Gary joins us. He brings pastries large enough to qualify as emotional support animals. My group loves him. I pretend not to. It keeps him humble. Ethan visits now and then. He takes his shoes off at the door, always asks permission before moving a chair, and brings flowers, the cheap kind, but chosen with intention. Our conversations aren't dramatic. They're slow, careful, real. That's how healing works. Not loud, not immediate, but steady like a tide that keeps showing up. I don't know what the future holds. I don't need to. For the first time, my life isn't built on fear of being replaced. It's built on the quiet certainty that I belong to myself. And when I close the balcony door each night, I look around this small space that nobody can take from me, not through manipulation, not through guilt, not through the careless assumption that mothers don't need boundaries. My room is peaceful. My voice is my own. And trouble? Well, I've finally learned to be the right kind.